Hey, this is Ben. Welcome back. Now I'm going to take you through some of the songs from my last record and some of the processes that went into making it. Cool, so now I wanted to take you through one of the songs that I've made using this process of spectral extraction from acoustic sounds, piped through MPE, that MIDI data gets recorded into Cubase, and then I can compose with that data. So in the last video, I showed the spectral analysis using a piano. I wanted to show you how I actually used it in compositions. So in this song, it's called Torn in Two from my last record, which is also called Torn in Two. This song is based around recordings from a crystal bachet. Crystal bachet is an instrument invented in France by the Bachet brothers in the 50s, I believe. It has a bunch of glass rods. You get your fingers wet, you vibrate the glass rods, and those vibrate these resonators and has this amazing sound. So I have a bunch of recordings from this instrument that I then analyzed for the loudest partials, converted that into MPE data using Max MSP, and then sort of just went about composing a piece of music. So I can show you the, these are the original recordings. And then here is a resynthesis form, because this is a piece of music. I started off simply. I think the first time you only hear two of these partials, so the rest of these are muted. So if you play those together, it's like this sort of anticipatory thing. It's kind of a ghost of the original. Sort of state it again. And there I introduce the idea of playing with pitch just on some of these partials. Quiet before the storm. Yeah, I mean, basically the whole compositional process of this song is it's really just creating these sort of attacks and then activating all of these partials. And then the B section, I come in with sustained sounds from these partials. And that's sort of the entirety of the piece. It's a pretty simple concept. But what I like about this process is that, as you saw in the beginning, I can be kind of invisible. I can go from that to some of these. I'll just take you through some of these partials real quick. So I'll take away the ones that are muted. Then we can just kind of hear what we got going on here. And this is really the way I would compose too. You know, I would have all of these to sort of choose from, and then transposing them makes a big difference. Playing with the pitch makes a big difference. Yeah, you can really kind of go wild with it. So, and what's happening here is that each of these, I have this colorized so that each one is showing me that it's on a different channel. That's what MPE is. This is being synthesized with UVI Falcon. So I have a wavetable, a sample, and some noise. And throughout the song, I automate those different, you know, the different volumes on each of those oscillators. So each one is showing me right here. You know, one of the things I love about Cubase is how flexible it is for this kind of stuff. And this info line shows you everything you need to know right here, and you can edit it all. So right there, I know I'm on channel 8, you know, or I could be on 7. So, you know, and I can change the velocity, the note, all of this stuff is like really easily under my control. Whereas a lot of DAWs, it's, you know, they don't give you all that information so easily editable for you. So we can just mute those. Creeping in. And so if you transpose these, you can get sort of crazy sounding clusters going. Cool, so the way this sound is being synthesized is using UVI Falcon. And in here I have a couple different sound sources going. I have a granular oscillator filled with a dulcimer recording. Then I have a wavetable, and it has I'm using one of their stock wavetables. And then I have a noise oscillator. One of the things I love about Falcon is all the different kinds of noise it has. It has a lot of like really interesting kind of academic kind of noise sources that you only get in like Super Collider and kind of nerdy software, but they have them all, which I really love. So, and then what I do is in the beginning, like you'll see here, all these this volume automation is turning up these various oscillators at different times throughout the song. So we start in just using this sample. Let me just reset this. This is just the that's the sound of the dulcimer. So I did that to be more pure, but not just a sine wave. Then we continue on. Still just the dulcimer. And you'll see right about here is where I introduce some of the noise oscillator. And then this next time we hit, I'm bringing up the wavetable. So we'll get a lot more harmonically complex. I'll solo just that. So, you know, this style of composition comes from it was invented in Earcam in the 80s, and essentially what it is it's analysis and resynthesis. So they would analyze acoustic sounds and then by and large have an orchestra play them back and approximate the microtonality that they would get. The results are microtonal because they're based on the harmonic spectrum, and they're not quantized to our like 12-tone Western scale. They fall, you know, somewhere in between all of these notes. So they would have the orchestra approximate these pitches and play them back. What's interesting about that, there's a lot, but one of the things is that you're resynthesizing not using sine waves or like pure waves that would give you a pure resynthesis of the original, because sine waves don't have harmonics of themselves. So if you stack a bunch of sine waves, you'll end up with an approximation of the original sound. But once you start adding in sounds that have their own harmonics, you get crazy dense buildup of all these harmonics, like you would in the orchestra, or using oscillators that aren't sine-based, that have their own harmonics. So that's what this is. And then, you know, at that moment, I bring in these sort of drum hits. This one is synthesized using Serum. And it's basically a sine wave with noise, but I have it going through a pretty intense chain. I have it going through Homicide, which I love. I have it going through, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's a Drummer 1961. It's a tube equalizer, but it's got, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's got like, I don't know, 8 or 10 tubes for each channel, so you can overdrive at each point, and you can get some really sculptable saturation. Then I have it going into Relayer by UVI, which I love. It's an EQ. And then I mean, sorry, an echo or a delay. And then I actually have it going through another delay. So that sounds like this. And it just provides these like bassy impacts. And then I have a strobe, very simple sine wave synth that sits underneath that all. But that's also MPE, so I'm drawing in, you know, those are following the exact microtonal pitches, and I'm drawing in all that automation data. And that's like the majority. This song is very simple. It creates like complex sounds, but from really only 1, 2, 3 sources and the original recordings. One of the things I like doing, I mean, you know, this is a style called spectral music that I kind of like got inspired by. It's by no means a sort of strict representation of that. And one of the things I really like to do is to mix back in the original sounds into my synthesized versions, because you can play with how much you're mimicking the original sound and how much you're sort of going away from it. So it's just like it's a fun thing to play with. I think we lost it. Let me reset this. Oops. Sorry, I'm using an old version of this script. This is, you know, this session's old at this point, so I keep popping up with these errors that have since been solved. So this song is really in 3 parts. There's the beginning with all the hits, and then we go into a kind of a little rhythmic part, subtly rhythmic, and then it ends in this sort of ominous, like I take those notes and then I extend them. So previously we'd been in a sort of like attack-based composition, and then it just all gets elongated for the end. So here's the kind of rhythmic section, but also I bring back in the hits. I have this funny, you barely hear it. It's a vocal sound from a chip-based synthesizer. I think it's chip speech. Yeah, anyway, it's just mixed in there very slightly. So then we kind of climax there. Oops, and climax here. So then I go into this like just pad section, which is a instrument from Sound Dust called Oregon, and then an atmosphere patch that I made that's just a very simple oscillator. That's kind of an approximation of how it sounds on the record. It's kind of not, because I'm pulling up an old session here, but one of the other sort of inspirations of this record, you know, this record is a lot about like frustration and feeling disassociated with things that are sort of happening around us, but trying to gain some perspective from it, like get away from it so you can kind of look down upon it. So one of the ways that I interpret that is kind of slamming all of this sonic information through limited bandwidth. In other words, like hitting limiters pretty hard and hitting compressors pretty hard. And so you'll hear like this simple bass sound from Cypher. It just gets louder and louder and kind of drowns out the other sounds because it's just taking over the mix. You can hear that actually even, yeah, we turn this down for the video. You know, I delivered this to the mastering engineer. You know, like that part of the song is really kind of clipped. It's kind of a rectangle, but that's the sound I wanted, and so there wasn't a lot he could play with in terms of dynamics. But again, we decided I gave him some where there was more headroom and some that were just exactly as I envisioned, and I'm going through. I'm sending out of my 2-bus through this EQ and then back into an apogee converter here with soft limit. So I'm hitting my converter really hard that is acting as a limiter, and I ended up just liking that sound of it. So that's really kind of the sound of the record as well. So now I just wanted to show a different song from that album. This one is not microtonal or spectral or anything like that. And this is actually the only song on the album that has a beat. The beat drops in the second half of the song. I started this song by recording a bunch of noise, but it's kind of weird noise. It's electrostatic noise using this thing. This thing picks up the noise from electronics. I've always loved noise and various textures of noise, and this one has a very unique sort of texture. So like, this is the sound of my cell phone, I guess. That's what it says. Here's some more. I guess this is an iPad. So I just, went around recording a bunch of stuff, brought it in here, edited it just roughly for dynamics. And then I used this crazy plugin, let me pull it up, by Melda Productions. There's a couple of different people making this kind of plugin, but it's a spectral morphing plugin. So what this does, I routed all of that noise into this plugin, and also routed a synthesizer and then the drums. And so what you end up with is some sort of mixture of, it's kind of like a vocoder, but different. So you end up with like a mixture of the noise and then the drums and the synth kind of, when the noise hits, they kind of trigger the sounds in the background and vice versa. And then you can sort of play where along the like morphing spectrum you are, if you're sort of right at the noise or more towards the synths. So that's this. You'll hear it as we move through the song. That's the synth starting in the background. And when those like transients happen, they kind of kick on the synth. That was a kick. Here's another kick. The kick's obviously turned all the way down. It's just being routed through this plugin. Those were snare drum hits. And then pretty soon we're gonna bring in the actual sound of the drums. Drop down to, again, an Omnisphere pad and a bass. I'm using Razor by the Reactor patch by Native Instruments. And then we go back into the noise and a field recording of some birds, actually. Yeah, I was going to talk over that, but it's pretty hard when those drums come in. You know, my previous record was this one called 1979, which was pretty quiet, pretty ambient. It was all recorded to cassette tape. And after I released that and then played live with that for a while, I really wanted I wanted to kind of like be able to hit people over the head with frequencies, and I wanted to do something full spectrum. So this song, I think in particular, came out of my desire to make people shut the fuck up. Like when you're playing live, just like, you know, when you're playing ambient music, sometimes you can hear people talking, you know, and then like I just wanted to be able to command people with sound, basically. And as I was talking about that, I remembered that the synth, what I thought was a synth, actually was a recording of a woodwind quintet that I used on the previous song for this record, slowed down and put through that whole process. All right, cool. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed. If If you want to check out my music, it's on all the streaming services or my website. And see you next time.